What's going on, guys? It's me, Zach, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. This one, I'm going to go over a couple players that I think are pretty must starts or must sits, despite what I think a lot of you might be doing. In these videos, I'm trying to touch on some players that I think are pretty much fringe starts or sits, because I think in general, a lot of people will go over starts and sits for every single game, or they'll give you advice that's pretty obvious. They'll tell you to start a running back that everybody's starting, and they'll tell you to bench a guy that nobody's even looking at. So I try to look at guys that are sort of on the edge of lineup consideration this week and then give you my thoughts on them. As always, if you do have any specific start sit questions, you're always more than welcome to ask me in the comments. I'll be able to get back to you before the game starts. So feel free to ask me those. I love helping you guys out, and hopefully I don't lead you wrong. But I guess if I give you advice, then at least you can blame me if you make the wrong decision. So it always helps to have a scapegoat. But I do want to take a minute to thank everybody for all the support we've been getting. We did break that 300 subscriber goal. I think we're at 302 right now. So that's really awesome. Let's see if we can get to 400 by the end of the season. Probably not, but it's really fun seeing the channel grow, and I like sort of setting those goals high. But if this is your first time on the channel, thank you guys for stopping by. Please do take a minute to like the video if you get anything out of it. You can subscribe to the channel. You can click the bell so you get notifications when I put new videos out. And as always, just want to thank you guys again for all the support. But yeah, with that, let's get into the first player. The first must start for me this week is going to be Andy Dalton. I think he's probably my favorite quarterback streaming option this week. He plays the Las Vegas Raiders, who have given up the most points to the quarterback position in fantasy this season. And the Raiders' offense themselves is looking up quite a bit. They've been able to run the ball really effectively, and they're really starting to mesh with Devontae Adams, and they should get Waller back potentially, and Renfro should be getting healthier. So this Raiders' offense is going to put up plenty of points on the Saints team, and the Saints are going to have to answer, and I think they'll be able to against a really soft Raiders defense. As always, Andy Dalton's going to have Alvin Kamara and Olave. Olave is a stud. He's probably going to win an Offensive Rookie of the Year this season, unless like Kenneth Walker or something steals it. But there are plenty of weapons for Andy Dalton to succeed in this game, and the Raiders' defense is just absolutely awful. I wouldn't be shocked if the Saints get down early, and then Andy Dalton sets up a sort of similar game line to what he did last week, where he ends up with 300 yards and a couple touchdowns, just because there's a lot of garbage time and a lot of yards after the catch for him and his weapons. The next must start for me is the tight end streamer is going to be Mike Gesicki. He's got 7 targets in each of his last 2 games, so even though he had a pretty lackluster performance last week, he was still much more involved in the offense than he'd been in the first 5 weeks. And Waddle's a little banged up in this one, so there should be maybe a little bit more concentration on the tight end position in Tyreek Hill. And the Lions' offense is default. That's the Dolphins matchup this week, so it's going to be pretty easy for Gesicki to find open space against this defense. Obviously, as always, opposing teams are going to have to deal with Tyreek Hill and Waddle, so Gesicki is going to get not a whole lot of attention, so should be able to do plenty underneath. And there's also plenty of rumors surrounding Mike Gesicki involving trade rumors, so if that is the case, then there's certainly reason for the Dolphins to showcase him in this game, get as much value out of him as possible, and really show what he can do against a really bad defense so he can put up a fluffy stat line. I wouldn't be shocked at all if he ends up with 5 for 60 and a touchdown, and out of the tight end position, that's absolutely awesome. So in all the leagues that I have Travis Kelce this week, I went and picked up Mike Gesicki, and he's my start. So if you can get Gesicki on your lineup and you have a tight end on a bye, or even if you've been streaming the position all year, I think Gesicki's a fine option. The next must start for me is going to be WAN'DALE Robinson. He faces a pretty soft Seahawks defense this week, and he's just very clearly the number 1 wide receiver for the Giants. They've been scheming him looks. He's got 12 targets over the last 2 weeks with really limited snaps. I'd expect his snap share to continue going up. He's going to be more and more involved in this offense. The Giants just traded Kadarius Toney, so they clearly do have a lot of faith in WAN'DALE Robinson being their guy. And the Seahawks offense has actually been surprisingly good, so the Giants are going to need to put up plenty of points in this one. The Giants are going to scheme looks for WAN'DALE Robinson. He's their best offensive weapon outside of Saquon, so he'll probably touch the ball 10 times in this game. He's going to get some end arounds probably. He'll get a lot of wide receiver screens, and he's just a really fast player. I think the touchdown upside's maybe a little limited, but there will be plenty of opportunities for this Giants team to score some points this week, and I wouldn't be shocked at all if he found the end zone. He has done that already this season, but even without that, I think you're going to find a world where he gets like 8 catches and 60 yards every week, so you might end up with sort of like a Keenan Allen light out of WAN'DALE Robinson, and that's certainly a guy that I want to start in my lineup, especially if you've got guys on bye. The next must start for me this week is going to be D'Onta Foreman. Chuba Hubbard's going to miss this game against the Falcons, so it would not shock me at all to see D'Onta Foreman get 15 to 20 touches. He could even get more than that if they don't want to use Blackshear very much. I don't know how much faith they're going to have in him, so there's that little bit of a wild card here. But regardless, they face a really weak Falcons run defense, and honestly, the Panthers are going to be in this game. So believe it or not, whoever wins this game is going to be in sole possession of first place in the NFC South. So that's crazy, but the fact of the matter is the Panthers are going to be competitive enough in this game to really lean on their run game. D'Onta Foreman looked pretty good last week. Chuba did look like the better runner to me, but with him missing this game, Foreman's going to be active, and he's going to get the lion's share of the work. he'll get a couple catches as well. They do throw the ball to the running back quite a bit in Carolina, obviously. So I think there'll be a couple opportunities for the Panther team to score touchdowns as well. And we all know that D'Onta Foreman's going to get the goal line work. So I wouldn't be shocked at all to see Foreman get 20 touches for 100 total yards and a touchdown this week. So honestly, he's maybe even a top 15 play at the running back position. And I just have a hard time believing that you've got 2 or 3 better options than him on your roster. The first must-sit for me this week is going to be A.J. Dillon. This one kind of hurts me because I was really in on A.J. Dillon coming into the season, but he just really hasn't been that involved since week 1. He's been phased out of the Packers offense, and honestly, it makes sense. Aaron Jones is just a better running back than him. He's more explosive. He's a better pass catcher, and it just makes sense. This Packers offense is struggling, so they need to find a way to get the ball into Aaron Jones' hands as much as possible, and as we all know, Aaron Jones is going to get the pass-catching work for this team, and I won't be shocked at all if they're down 2 scores really early in this game. They're going to be playing catch-up quite a bit against the Bills, and that leans really heavily towards Aaron Jones. I think Aaron Jones is maybe even going to put up another 9-10 catch game like he did this last week, so it's just going to be really hard for A.J. Dillon to be involved there. He's going to get probably 5 to 10 touches this week, so he's only really going to pay off if he scores a touchdown, and I mean, let's be honest, how many touchdowns the Packers really going to score this week? They've had a tough time scoring against far lesser defenses over the last 3 weeks, and now they get to play probably the best team in the NFL with a really high-end defense. So I have a hard time really trusting A.J. Dillon. I think in general you can find better guys on waivers. I'd much rather start D'Onta Foreman than him. I'd much rather start Michael Carter. I would have rather started Gus Edwards on Thursday, even though that one didn't work out because of the injury. But plenty of guys that you could have added on waivers this week I think are much better than A.J. Dillon. So A.J. Dillon's just going to be a sit for me pretty much regardless of what you have. Staying in that same game, Romeo Doubs is going to be a must-sit for me as well. The Packers' offense, as I've said previously, has just been absolutely brutal over the last month and honestly the whole season. And Doubs' play seems to have regressed over the last few weeks. He looked really good early on, but he's had a couple of drops, and he seems a little nervous out there. And obviously, when you drop a couple passes, Aaron Rodgers loses quite a bit of faith in you. I mean, he is going to be absolutely necessary to this offense because they're not going to have Allen Lazard. We know Randall Cobb's out, so it's going to be him, Sammy Watkins, and Christian Watson to go with Robert Tonyan in the running back. So Romeo Doubs is obviously not going to get benched just because they absolutely need him. But, I mean, the Packers offense will be lucky to score 20-plus points this week. I bet they end up under that for sure. And Doubs, I mean, he won't score 0 fantasy points again. He's too involved in this offense. But I'd be very shocked if he breaks 10 fantasy points in this game. You're basically banking on a touchdown. And same thing with Dillon. How many touchdowns are the Packers going to score this week? Not a lot, so I'm not going to bet on that. If you have any other options, I'd love to start over Romeo Doubs. I think you just got to find a way to sit Romeo Doubs this week and see if he can turn things around from here. The next must-sit for me this week is going to be KAREEM Hunt. He's got less than 10 touches in each of the last 2 weeks, and there's a very high likelihood that KAREEM Hunt gets traded after this week. I think that if the Browns do lose this game to the Bengals, which I'd expect them to do, it just makes a whole lot of sense for them to sell off a lot of their players. KAREEM Hunt's obviously a guy that they don't necessarily see as a part of their future because they've got Dearness Johnson and Nick Chubb. So why would they risk injuring KAREEM Hunt this week? They don't need to showcase him. Everybody knows what they're getting in KAREEM Hunt. So it just makes a lot of sense for them to not play him a whole lot and just trade him after this week. And there's also no Jamar Chase in this one for the Bengals. So it's quite possible that the Bengals sort of revert back to a more run-heavy offense. It's going to slow down the game. There will be a lot less total plays in this game, and that means that there's just going to be less opportunities for all players involved. With KAREEM Hunt, you're going to need a touchdown for him to pay off this week. I don't think he's going to get that because Nick Chubb's been mainly getting the goal line work. I'd be looking for better options than KAREEM Hunt. Same guys like I mentioned before, Michael Carter, D'Onta Foreman, those guys I'd definitely start over KAREEM Hunt this week. The last must-sit for me this week is going to be Robert Woods. The Texans just aren't going to make the Titans need to throw the ball much this week. Derrick Henry's got over 200 rushing yards in each of the last 3 matchups versus the Texans, so that's going to be the game plan for the Titans. They're going to give Derrick Henry the ball 30-plus times. Derrick Henry's probably going to have 150 or more rushing yards, and the Texans are going to be playing catch-up, and the Titans are going to be milking clock. So there's just not going to be a whole lot of passing volume for Robert Woods in this one. It sounds like Tannehill might miss this week, so you're going to see Malik Willis as well. So that's much more of a wild card. I think they'll run the ball with Malik Willis quite a bit, and it's just going to be a really, really, really run-heavy attack this game, more so than normal even, and there's just not going to be enough volume to go around, and even when they have had a little bit more volume, Robert Woods has yet to exceed 4 receptions in a single game this year. I think he's got 4 in every game except one where he had 3. So just don't be fooled by the nice matchup this week unless you're really desperate. I would just certainly, there's going to be better players on your waiver wire than Robert Woods. So I would avoid playing Robert Woods at all cost. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.